podcast. Today I am willing to go through another book. I think this time it is actually a summary, so we're going to go through a book summary. I have probably been drinking way too much coffee up to now. Some of the drawbacks that I'm clearly seeing, and this is why I'm talking about it, not being able to concentrate that well, and one thing to do about that definitely is drinking a bunch of water. Andrew Huberman, neuroscientist from Stanford, once said that, 1 glass of coffee should equal 1 glass of water that you should be drinking. So I guess this would be a great rule to live by when it comes to caffeine. Anyway, Jordan Peterson may be a very controversial figure, especially I think as of now as well. And I don't know if has always been is a good statement, but at this point in time, it certainly I think is the case. But still, this should definitely not prevent me from going through Maps of Meaning, the Architecture of Belief. I don't know if this was actually his first book. Could be the case. I do not really remember. This is a summary by the bestbookbits.com site. A site that kind of feels like a collection of different summaries from different websites, which I think may not be the coolest thing to do. But anyway, Maps of Meaning by Jordan B. Peterson. Why have people from different cultures and eras formulated myths and stories with similar structures? What does this similarity tell us about the mind, morality, and the structure of the world itself? Maps of Meaning offers a provocative new hypothesis that explores the connection between what modern neuropsychology tells us about the brain and what rituals, myths, and religious stories have long narrated. Drawing insights from the worlds of neuropsychology, cognitive science, and Freudian and, I guess, Jungian or Yangian approaches to mythology and narrative, Jordan B. Peterson argues that myths and religious stories have a structure determined by the nature of the mind and play a key role in the regulation of human emotions. Ambitious in scope and daring in its exploration of ideas, Maps of Meaning presents a rich theory that makes the wisdom of meaning of myth accessible to the critical modern mind. I don't know if the modern mind is critical, but let's just take it, I guess. Why study myth? Jordan Peterson is a clinical psychologist and professor who taught at Harvard and the University of Toronto. He became famous for his public political stances and confrontational debates against people on the political far left, while Dr. Peterson dislikes being called a right-winger and describes himself as a classical British liberal. Many of the viewpoints echo modern conservatism and praise the value of tradition, which I think can be understood. Period. Jordan Peterson left religion in his teenage years, like many in the Western world, when many of his reasonable questions about religion could not be answered by adults. He finally had to leave it behind, regarding it as outdated superstition. Then in a move Dr. Peterson would later see as unbelievably stereotypical and predictable, he turns to political utopia for the answers that religion could no longer provide. He became involved with organizing the local left-wing political party, which mostly was composed of socialists who claimed a new economic system would fix the problems of working-class people. But after some time in this organization, he was deeply troubled that he couldn't respect any of the activists he met. They loved to talk about virtuous compassion, but underneath the surface they were undisciplined and bitter people who contained nothing meaningful in their life but their left-wing ideology. Which is indeed actually something that I can really understand. Being surrounded by people that are just talking, having certain, really deep beliefs. By the way, I believe that very deep beliefs that, go too far, whether it is left-winged or right-winged, is both probably not that of a good idea. Staying in the middle, I think, makes sense, at least trying to stay in the middle, and also trying to just in general, outside of political issues, outside of quite everything, thinking about the thoughts that one is having and challenging those thoughts that one is having really makes sense. My beliefs and my thoughts about, the work that I'm doing, let's challenge that. What am I thinking? Why am I thinking about that? What if I think about something different? What I think about it in a different way? Could this serve me better? Kind of maybe an anecdote to pragmatism that I've also recently covered on a podcast here, from Varric Sivers as a book notes, episode. But pragmatism, something that's actually rather interesting to me, and could rather be important to quite a lot of people, I would say. I don't really know if I want to go through. Is this only about Peterson and what he is doing and what he's saying and whatnot? Maybe it's just today, but it is a bit of anyway. Let's just see what this is leading to. At the same time, Jordan Peterson was also volunteering at a college board where he met many successful business owners, and while their conservative views greatly conflicted with his, he respected them tremendously. They were disciplined, intelligent, trustworthy, and dedicated to their families. This was very confusing for him. Later in life, Dr. Peterson was reading a book by George Orwell, probably 1984, which is a really good one. I've also really enjoyed it, but I would say that I was definitely way too young at this point. I was 16, 17 at this point in time. I'm 22. A month ago, actually. Not even a month ago, I turned 22. So I believe that reading it right now would definitely, first of all, be interesting, and second of all, let me think about things a bit more, probably. Is everything right there? Yes, it is. Later in life, Dr. Peterson was reading blah, 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 blah. That gave him insights into this conflict and why he couldn't like the socialist activists. Orwell wrote that socialists in his time were motivated not by love for the poor, but just hatred for the rich, despite what they claimed, and these people used a compassionate ideology as a mask for their real motives, which was resentment born of personal failure and a desire for revenge. Their ideology played an important emotional role in their lives, allowing them to remain blind as to their own role in causing their lives' frustrations. But in the end, by the way, I've actually learned that but in the beginning of a sentence should not be done, rather, however. But anyway. However, in the end, Dr. Peterson found the fundamental thing that disturbed him about those people was their possession by the ideology itself, not that they were left-winged or right-winged, or left-wing or right-wing, which I also can really understand. As I said before, I think being really possessed, I think possession and being possessed is a good word here, by anything is not good. Also, in this day and age, being obsessed by obsessed with sports, doing way too much. Balance, I think, is a really good thought. Balance is a really good strategy to live by, I would say. And recently, I've talked about this before, I am listening to a lot of Shi Hengyi that has been covered by the Mulligan brothers quite a bit, but since he's also fluent in German, there's also a few German interviews featuring him and or with him that are really quite interesting. Like it really does change a bit. Don't necessarily want to say the quality of the content and or what he's saying, but it does change a bit with language. So in English, I feel like it is definitely a tiny bit more restricted. And so the German versions, quote unquote, versions, are a tiny bit better, I feel like. But he is talking about balance quite for a bit or quite a bit, and stating that in the end everything leads to balance, and I certainly think so. When I am overworking myself, when I'm burning out, that I'm basically moving myself into a period of rest that I then have to do. Versus maybe me thinking about the fact that I could burn out and therefore incorporate rest and this balance into my life, for example. Whether this is related to work-life balance and or sport-life balance and or whatever life balance is totally just doesn't really matter. Later in life, Dr. Peterson was reading, or have read that already, their ideology played an important emotional role in their lives, allowing them to remain blind as to their own role in causing their life frustrations. An ideology is a system of belief that usually gives people simple rules of dividing the world into good people and bad people, oppressors and victims. Of course, the people selling us the ideology always assure us that we are undeniably on the good side and some other groups of thems are on the evil side. This allows people to avoid painful self-reflection, and it allows us to avoid taking responsibility for any evil in this world. We will come back to this idea in a minute, but let's return for now to Dr. Peterson's life. Confronting the existence of evil. Maybe I will scroll down a little tiny bit. The great mother is the unknown, dangerous yet promising. So all of a sudden we're having a number there. 3, don't quickly dismiss myths, they contain implicit wisdom. Don't assume myths are a primitive form of science. And where is the number 1? Oh, why study myth? I'm just gonna go through those headlines a bit and see whether there's something that I find particularly interesting. What is the goal of education? Let's do this one. Most of us believe that the goal of education and socialization are to produce an knowledgeable, productive adult. This is true, but perhaps education is even more about establishing a stable social environment. Some human behaviors that are chaotic and unpredictable make people feel stressed and threatened. Other behaviors may only have negative consequences for society and the long term. Social order is incredibly important to our personal well-being because it is mostly other people's action that may disturb us. Period. Even more deeply, by being socialized, we are shielded also from our own inner mystery and chaos because we act in a predictable way towards other people. We all carry around inside us a hierarchy of motivation, which is how we decide what to do and not to do. This hierarchy is shaped by social feedback. But I would certainly say that by seeing this, one can definitely work on that motivation and shift it to maybe different fields and or shift it to different triggers or another trigger that I do not care that much about what my friends are saying that I'm doing when I'm talking about it, but rather get myself certain people to listen to, primarily listen to, probably, that are maybe in the field or in a position that I would like to be in, to maybe have a different feedback loop, a feedback loop that is not definitely not a feedback loop that is definitely not already underlining what I am doing, but just giving honest and good feedback to what I'm doing. So I think what is very important there is saying that not searching for opinions, not searching for people that say that whatever I'm doing is good, and great, and I should, move on and or go on doing that, but rather find also people that are saying like, okay, you should be doing something different, and just being honest about it, whether it is good or whether it is bad. But definitely in general, listening to people that say, whatever you're doing is not good also makes sense, to kind of balance things out again. The dark side, the tyrannical father. However, the great father also has a negative side. He can also become a tyrant, pursuing order to the point he suppresses any change and squashes the emergence of anything new. So in all human cultures, there's always the threat of the state becoming too controlling and tyrannical. In myths, this state of tyranny is often represented as a kingdom stuck by drought, ruled by an old, sick king who is prideful and blind to evil. There is an ever-present danger of human societies becoming totalitarian, taking socially enforced order too far, and demanding from people total uniformity. All novel things and behaviors are suppressed, including art and ideas. Probably something that you've heard before, and by thinking about dictatorship, this is probably what you're seeing for, maybe not for the most part, but you're just seeing that quite a bit. Hitler and Nazis in general and whatever, or maybe not suppressing all kinds of behavior, including art and ideas, but certain ideas and certain forms of it, and labeling certain other forms as good, having this really black and white, one side is good and the other side is bad, and a very strict line, and sometimes a very randomly drawn line that excludes certain parts and or at the same time includes certain parts. But yeah, with that being said, I'm going to end the episode here. I hope that you've liked it and enjoyed it, and I'm going to see you the next time. So